Hi there, I'm Melisa Nielsen. Today we're going to talk about perfectionism. I'm not really going to talk about it in adults as much as with children. So perfectionism tends to be a trait that's mostly held by melancholics. Now, the reason I say that, all of us have this desire to do everything that's right? Like all of us do, just at varying degrees. So what I see with the choleric is we're like the done is better than perfect people. And we get it done, and if we can go back and make it pretty later, we'll do that. But that's kind of the choleric space. Now with that doesn't mean that we don't have perfectionist tendencies, right? So like, I love watercolor, and I have this problem of like trying to fix it if it doesn't work out right. And what I have to learn about myself, or what I've been learning about myself, is walk away and then come back, and maybe you can fix it more later. Or with handwork, I'm pretty much a perfectionist with handwork. If there is a drop stitch, doesn't matter if it's 6 inches below and I didn't just now notice it, I will undo it because it drives me up a tree. So there are definitely things like that all temperaments have. Like all temperaments have their like one thing or two things or 10 things that they're like super perfectionist about. But when it comes to perfectionism, as far as like an ism, it's generally melancholics that struggle with it. So with that, I just want to say, hey, it's all good. So how do you get out of that space? And then how do you help your children out of that space? Often I'll get messages from parents that have children that are perfectionists, and they're like, I can't get this child to do anything. The main lesson work takes 4 hours, and it should never take 4 hours, like ever. So I guess there are times I suppose it could take 4 hours, but not for the same reasons that it's not for a perfectionist reason. So this perfectionist space becomes very debilitating, and it becomes anxiety producing. I definitely, like I said, I see it way more in melancholics. Melancholy phlegmatics, even worse. It's even harder for you guys because you have the phlegmatic part about like having a really hard time making decisions. And then you have the melancholic part of like, I'm going to make the wrong decision. I'm going to do this wrong. So marry those together, and it can be a recipe for high anxiety and disaster. So what we want to do, if that's you and your temperament already, and you're like, Melisa, you're just describing me completely, I want you to take a deep breath, because if you don't already have your anxiety under control, you've got to learn to get it under control. There's so many things. Like I have these supplements at my desk. Why? Because I take them all day long. So I really like theanine, L-theanine, super good. That was bad grammar. It's great for focus and helps me not be stressed. I also love this one from doTERRA. It's called Adaptive. And they have a roll-on, and they have an oil that you can put in the diffuser. I like the capsules. And they're sitting here at my desk. Why? Well, this is where I do all my work. This is where all the things happen. This is where the Zooms happen. This is where the decisions happen. And sometimes it's stressful. We run a growing company, and sometimes there's stress involved in that. So even though I don't generally have anxiety, what I found, and we actually have a video on anxiety, if you go back and look, video or audio if you're listening on podcast, we talk about anxiety and how it shows up differently for different temperaments. So for me, my blood pressure goes up. Had a stroke 6 years ago. Don't want to go down that road again. So yes, I will take all the supplements I need to not be anxious. And I'm inviting you to do the same, to figure out what you need to do to control your anxiety so that you don't pass it on to your kids. I know that one hurt, right? Like passing it on to our kids is like the one thing that we really don't want to do, because we've chosen this way of living and this way of teaching so that we can give them the beauty of life. And how do we give them the beauty of life if we're giving them like our own crap, right? Our stuff that we're carrying with us. So I want you to just like do a self check-in. Ask yourself, like I'll say, Melisa, what do you need right now? And sometimes it's just like, I need a snack. or I need to go pee and I haven't been to the bathroom in like 6 hours because I was in a Zoom meeting, or underneath, like when I was breastfeeding mom, underneath a child. Like how many times have you, if you're in that space of life, like you've gotten through the day and you're like, I didn't even eat today. But it wasn't because you didn't have food. It was because you were busy feeding everybody else. And then you were like, oh, wait a minute, I forgot to take care of me. So often that anxiety comes from those places. So to bring it sort of back full circle with your child, if you've got a child that's got anxiety, you have to teach them how to manage it from the time that they're young. So I meditate every day. My children meditate. Meditation is huge to help with anxiety because it helps sort of bring that down. And in that meditation space, I would say, especially for your children that have this perfectionism thing going on. I don't want to call it the disease of perfectionism because I'm definitely not about like labeling that, but I know some people have. I just think it's an ism, and we all have some sort of ism going. But with perfectionism, we have to really do a good job of visualizing outcome. And this is what I do when we talk about it with our kids. I go, okay, let's visualize the outcome. You can do that with a main lesson drawing. You can do that with your main lesson planning. I can do that with watercolor. I can do that with a knitting project. Visualize your outcome. Then, and it's about like slowing that down, right? So you're visualizing your outcome. Then you also visualize the steps to get there. I think one of the hardest pairings is melancholic sanguine, because they have this desire, and it looks like ADHD often. They have this desire to be out here and really big and bubbly, but they want it perfect. And our oldest daughter has that struggle, and that struggle of I need it to be perfect. She used to say, I have a vision, and Eric would be like, oh no, not a vision. What are we gonna do now? Because they get it in their head that it has to be a certain way. And if it's not a certain way, then all is lost, and it's really hard. So one of the things that I think is important is, if your child does have a predominantly melancholic temperament, or you do, is to realize that humility is hard for you. Doesn't mean you shouldn't develop it. In fact, you probably need to develop it more than, say, your phlegmatic sanguine or choleric counterparts. The reason why I think it's hard for you, and I studied this for years, and I had one of our followers say this to me a few months ago. She said it's because if we don't do it right, then it proves the voice that's in our head. That committee, the committee that's in your head. I call it the shitty committee sometimes, but that's what it is. It's like all going on in your head. And if you say, I did this wrong, and you are humble, then you can't reconcile that space in your mind. We don't want to give that to our kids. So we want to help them from an early age know how to wrangle that committee. And you can call it the peanut gallery, you can call it whatever you want. You want to teach them how to wrangle it. So meditation is a huge way to start. Having them slow down, especially if they have sanguine tendencies. Melancholic sanguine is a popular pairing. So they've got sanguine tendencies. There might be rushing too much. And in rushing, you don't get the details in the way you want. Our child is not, our youngest, Soraya, she's not melancholic, but she definitely has sanguine. We were painting together yesterday, and so because she's choleric sanguine, she can let things brush off really easily. But if she was not, this incident that I'm about to tell you about could have gone very much differently. So we were watercoloring, and there's a little teeny piece of black that we have to put on. Now, if you're a watercolor artist, you know that if you're painting anything dark with something light, you darn well better make sure the paint is all dry first. And she didn't. And she recovered it. But at first, it's that sanguine space of like needing to go fast. And when I asked her at the end, I said, so how could we have done that better? Well, I probably should have made sure that my paper was dry. Yes, you should have. She was able to brush it off because she's got enough choleric in her that she was like, done is better than perfect. But if that was a melancholic child, it would not have gone well. They would have wanted to redo it. They would have cried about it. It would have been a lot of big feelings. So you really want to help them have good expectations. help them slow down, and especially sanguine is part of their temperament. Help them to slow down so that they can see that their actions are what breeds the perfect result. Also, get rid of the word perfect. If you've got a child that is constantly worried that they're not measuring up, you've got to really work on that whole idea of perfectionism. Excuse me. That place of perfectionism will put a stranglehold on their life. So your job as a steward of them is to help them not have so much anxiety about it, and to be like able to let it run off, water off a duck's back, breathing and allowing the space to be nurturing, loving, really enjoying the space. And so I say things when I see, because, my youngest has got, even though she's not melancholic, she definitely has some anxiety going. And I don't want you to think that I think anxiety only belongs to those temperaments, because definitely not. Children that have spectrum things going on often have anxiety. So we deal with anxiety a lot. And I'll say things like, okay, so let's take a deep breath and let's just pretend that that's not a problem right now. And then her shoulders can come down. She can breathe better. And that's really what I want you to think about with your child. If you are struggling with perfectionism, I want you to lay out expectations with them. If they're young, they're really young, for second grade, then talk about, how you mess up all the time, and then make mistakes so that they can see you make mistakes. They need to see you make mistakes, and they need to see you recover from them. And they need to see you be okay with that. Also, the concept of humility being hard for them. Talk about what it means to be humble. We have a great book, then it's free. It's called 108 Days, and you can find it on our resources page at waldorfessentials.com/resources. And in that book, it's a spiritual book, but it's a spiritual book that's aimed at people that don't have a spiritual home, or that maybe are looking to build up these concepts without necessarily having spirituality in their life. So one of the lessons in there is on humility and what it means to be humble. And we have stories in there for children, in activities for teens, definitely exercises for parents. So if you're struggling with this place of humility, check it out and see if maybe that's helpful to you. But with your child, you definitely want to reinforce the space of it's okay to make a mistake. We can make a mistake all the time. Making mistakes is safe. So with that, I hope that's helpful. Hope you have a wonderful day. See you later. Bye.